Picture this. A warm April evening in the Bahamas. Crystal blue water. A couple who has spent the last decade sailing together, living their dream life on the ocean. They post everything on social media. Sunsets. Cinnamon rolls baked in a solar oven. Videos of sea turtles gliding beneath their boat. To the outside world, Brian and Lynette Hooker had the perfect life. But on the night of April 4th, 2026, that dream turned into something else entirely. Something much darker. Lynette Hooker vanished. Gone. Into the water. And the only person who knows what really happened that night is her husband. And here's the problem. His story doesn't add up. Welcome to the Case Report. I'm going to walk you through everything, who Lynette was, what her husband told police, and the one piece of evidence that blew his entire story apart. Stay with me, because this case is going to shock you. Let's start at the beginning. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. A wife, a mother, a sailor. She and her husband Brian had been married for about 25 years. For the last decade, the two of them lived almost entirely on their sailboat, a vessel they named Soulmate. They documented everything on Instagram under the account Sailing Hookers. Sunrises over open water. Island hopping. New adventures every few weeks. Louisiana, Florida, the Bahamas. This was their life. To look at Lynette's Instagram, you'd think she was one of the happiest people on the planet. She cooked on board. She filmed dolphins. She posted about rainbows. Just weeks before she disappeared, she wrote, "Living our best life." But behind that picture-perfect grid, things were not always what they seemed. Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth, would later tell investigators and the media that her mother and Brian had what she described as a rocky relationship. A history of not getting along. Especially when they drank. She alleged episodes of domestic violence beneath what looked like a seamless life at sea. Brian's attorneys denied these allegations. But they are important context for what comes next. Because on the night of April 4th, 2026, Lynette Hooker went into the water. And she never came back. Here's what Brian Hooker told police. Around 7:30 in the evening, he and Lynette left Hope Town in their small 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. They were heading back to the Soulmate, which was anchored near Elbow Cay in the Abaco Islands. A short trip. Routine, even. They had done this kind of thing hundreds of times before. But then, Brian says, the weather turned. The seas became rough. Winds picked up. And at some point during that journey across the dark water, Lynette fell from the dinghy. He says he tried to reach her. He says the winds and currents kept pulling them apart. He says she had the engine safety key on her when she fell, meaning he couldn't restart the motor. So he was stuck. He says he paddled for hours before finally making it back to shore. The next morning, April 5th, Brian Hooker reported his wife missing to local authorities. That was his story. A tragic accident. Rough seas. A terrible night. A heartbroken husband who tried everything and still couldn't save her. But investigators were not so sure. The Bahamian police began searching immediately. Shoreline patrols. Sea patrols. Aerial drone surveillance. Submersible drone operations. Within days, the U.S. Coast Guard opened a criminal investigation into Lynette's disappearance. Not a missing persons search. A criminal investigation. That detail alone tells you something. On April 8th, just 4 days after Lynette vanished, Bahamian police arrested Brian Hooker for additional questioning. The Royal Bahamas Police Force Assistant Commissioner went on record with Reuters and said the arrest was based on, and I quote, some probable cause. Brian's attorney immediately released a statement saying he categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. She said he was cooperating with investigators. She described him as completely heartbroken and deeply distressed. Extremely fragile, she said. Traumatized by everything he had been through. He was held for 5 days. Then released without charges. But police made one thing very clear. He would remain a suspect. Now here's where something interesting happens. After his release, Brian left the Bahamas. He returned to the United States, his attorney said, to visit his mother who was ill. Police were informed. He wasn't fleeing. But he was gone. And meanwhile, back in the Bahamas, Lynette's daughter Carly had flown in to help with the search. She met with Coast Guard officials. She met with Bahamian authorities. And she was asking questions that nobody seemed to have good answers to. She told ABC News, "I don't understand how she drowned or got floated away. It just made me think, why didn't he do this? Why didn't you do that? Why did that happen?" Carly also pointed out something that seemed almost impossible to get past. Her mother was an experienced sailor. She had been on the water for over a decade. She was a capable swimmer. The idea that she just slipped off a small boat and was swept away, never to be seen again, Carly didn't buy it. She told CNN, "And I want you to really hear this," she said her mother was her #1 supporter. And she said part of her still hoped Lynette was just on the opposite side of the island somewhere, taking a break from life. But deep down, she knew. Someone would have found her by now. Now, let's talk about the thing that changed everything. The thing that blew Brian Hooker's story wide open. The GPS data. While investigators were combing through Brian Hooker's electronic devices, his phone, his GPS equipment, whatever technology he had on him that night, they found something. Something that didn't match what he had told them. Brian had given investigators maps. He showed them where he said the dinghy traveled that night. He showed them the location where he said Lynette went overboard. That's where the initial search focused. That's where cadaver dogs were brought in. That's where divers went into the water. That's where the Coast Guard searched. But the forensic data recovered from his devices told a completely different story. According to multiple U.S. officials briefed on the investigation, the GPS track from Brian Hooker's electronic device showed his movements that night, and those movements did not line up with what he told investigators. The device showed him out on the water, stopping at a specific location in the Sea of Abaco, then returning. The location the data pointed to was not the location Brian had given them. In other words, his own phone contradicted him. A U.S. official told CBS News directly that Brian Hooker's account caused investigators to search in the wrong area while they were looking for Lynette. Think about what that means. While search teams were spending days combing the water where Brian said she went overboard, she may have actually been somewhere completely different. Somewhere his own device knew about. Somewhere he never mentioned. This is why, in late May 2026, U.S. investigators went back to the Bahamian government and asked for permission to send divers into new locations in the Sea of Abaco. Because the original search was based on information that the forensic evidence now suggested was false. The Bahamas granted permission. And during the week of June 2nd, the U.S. Coast Guard returned with divers, underwater vehicles, drones, and a cadaver dog. A full search operation. In the locations that the GPS data pointed them toward, not the locations Brian had described. They searched. They looked. And they concluded the search days later, without finding Lynette. But here's what you need to understand. Not finding her doesn't mean she isn't there. The ocean floor in that area is complex. The investigation is continuing. And the fact that they went back, based specifically on evidence that contradicted Brian's story, tells you everything about where this investigation is heading. There's one more thing I want to tell you about. The soulmate. Their sailboat. The vessel named after their love for each other. The one with their whole life aboard. Their decade of memories. Their solar oven. Their scuba tanks. The U.S. Coast Guard seized it. They found it approximately 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida. They took it as part of the ongoing criminal investigation. They also seized the dinghy, the small boat Lynette allegedly fell from that night. Both are now in the hands of investigators. And there's something else about the soulmate that is quietly sitting in the background of this entire story. The boat had an infrared camera aboard. A piece of technology that could potentially capture thermal images in dark conditions. On the water. At night. Investigators are examining it. Nobody has confirmed yet whether Brian used that camera on the night of April 4th. But it is currently being processed as part of the probe. Think about why that matters. If the camera was operational that night. If it captured anything. If there is footage somewhere of what actually happened on the water near Elbow Cay, that camera could change everything. So where does this leave us? Lynette Hooker has been missing since April 4, 2026. Her body has not been found. No charges have been filed. Brian Hooker has returned to the United States. He maintains his innocence. His attorney continues to say he has done nothing wrong. But here is what we know as facts. The GPS data from his own device contradicts the story he told police. The initial search was conducted in the wrong area based on his account. The sailboat and dinghy have both been seized. A criminal investigation is open and active. And his own stepdaughter does not believe him. The Coast Guard Investigative Service is still working this case. They have asked anyone with information to contact them directly through their Tips app. This investigation is not over. And Lynette Hooker's family is still waiting. Her mother Darlene told CNN they have many unanswered questions. Her daughter Carly is still searching for answers. Still holding on. Still hoping that somehow, someway, the truth comes out. Because when your husband's GPS tells a different story than he does, that's not a coincidence. That's a clue. And in a case like this, every clue matters. That's everything we know right now about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker. I will be updating this case every time something new breaks. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Turn on notifications. Because in true crime, the moment you look away is the moment you miss everything. I'll see you in the next one.